Hi, we are Rebecca, and Kevin, and this is our proposal for services to homeless patrons at the Central Library of the Houston Public Library System in Houston, Texas. The Central Library at HPL is part of a sprawling 46-location system serving over 2.3 million Houston residents. Per HPL estimates, there are currently 1.9 million registered library card holders and almost 2 million in-house library visits annually. Our video will propose 3 main changes to the Central Library. These have to do with policy changes, bringing in a social worker, and establishing a cooling center. But before we get into that, let's start with some background information on the city and the library. As you can see here, compared to the U.S. generally, Houston is more racially or ethnically diverse, with a lower population of white residents and a higher percentage of African Americans, Hispanics, and foreign-born immigrants. Houston is struggling more than Texas or the nation on average by measures of economics, housing, and education. Notably, their median salary is over $10,000 lower, their poverty rate is significantly higher, and compared to Texas or the nation, fewer residents have health insurance or own their own home. Adults are also less likely to have graduated high school. In terms of Houston's adult homeless population, every year the CFTH does a point-in-time count of this population, which encompasses homeless individuals on the street, in emergency shelters, and in transitional housing and safe havens in Harris County, which is Houston's county, and the neighboring 2 counties. This population is currently at about 3,280 individuals. Both general homelessness and unsheltered homelessness rates are decreasing in the Houston area in contrast to national trends. Only 23% of those surveyed were chronically homeless, and as of this year, most Harris County homeless individuals, at 58%, are sheltered. CFTH also reports on the primary causes of unsheltered homelessness. The vast majority cite economic factors or family conflict as their primary reason that they're homeless. They found that all unsheltered homeless individuals were adults, mostly over the age of 25. That doesn't mean that there are no homeless minors in Houston, only that in this survey they were all in some kind of emergency or transitional housing and not living on the street. There is the caveat that volunteers collected data on unsheltered individuals by talking to them to ascertain their circumstances. So some people they wanted to talk to, quote, refused, were sleeping, or had safety issues, so this data is imperfect. The Central Library is a campus of 2 buildings and a plaza. There's the historic Julia Idison building, which you can see on the right in this map, and the newer Jesse H. Jones building on the other side of the plaza. And here's a view of each of those buildings. Library officials state that their public computer and Wi-Fi services and their free public spaces are consistently a big draw for the homeless population here. As recent local news headlines show, however, HPL has been struggling with its relationship to homeless patrons.
Homelessness is a growing social issue that affects communities worldwide. The causes of homelessness are complex, often linked to unmet needs such as unemployment, mental and physical health challenges, substance abuse, and systemic inequities. While some of these individuals may receive some resource assistance through shelters, many continue to go without their needs being met. As homeless individuals use public libraries as daytime refuge, the libraries have opportunities to play a significant role in assisting these individuals by matching them to specific resources meeting their actual needs. Libraries can support homeless individuals by forming partnerships and offering specialized programs that provide vital resources. These may include help with medical needs, access to technology, assistance with government forms and applications, guidance on insurance, and other essential services for those in need. Unfortunately, due to negative perceptions of homeless individuals, some public library policies and procedures can be exclusive to those individuals, which may prevent those patrons from seeking help from a public library system or keep them from entering the organization altogether. Houston Public Library plays a crucial role as a central hub in downtown Houston, drawing large numbers of homeless individuals seeking refuge, resources, and a safe space. However, Houston Public Library's current approach to addressing homelessness primarily focuses on reactive measures to manage behavioral and hygienic concerns. A policy example directed specifically at homeless individuals basically states library buildings prohibit items such as sleeping items, large bags, and any wheeled devices, with the exception of wheelchairs or strollers. Personal belongings must not obstruct walkways or be left unattended, as staff may dispose of unclaimed items. Only 2 bags per person are allowed, and items larger than 3 feet in length or width are not permitted. Another library policy used against homeless individuals prohibits offensive bodily hygiene that constitutes a nuisance to others. Other exclusive policies include refusing to allow cash prints and loitering. By changing policies and expanding services to meet the physical, intellectual, and social and cultural needs of homeless individuals, Houston Public Library could create a more inclusive environment that offers not only shelter and safety, but also access to resources like medical support, technology, and educational materials. After conducting a SWOT analysis, the strengths of the Houston Public Library system demonstrate a strong commitment to outreach with initiatives like the Mobile Express Technology Lab, which brings critical resources directly to communities in need. Houston Public Library's policy for not charging overdue funds ensures that financial barriers do not prevent lower income or homeless patrons from accessing library services. However, weaknesses include current Houston Public Library policies disproportionately affecting homeless patrons, creating potential challenges ensuring equal access to resources. There is a risk of misuse of certain services, such as cooling centers, as well as overcrowding at the library branches, particularly the central library. Continuing with the SWOT analysis, opportunities include the expansion of Houston Public Library services to underserved community members, creating a safe space for all patrons seeking assistance. Building partnerships with local organizations could enhance the effectiveness and reach of these services. Expanding similar services to additional library branches can further help homeless populations across the city, as well as strengthen the Houston Public Library's relationship with the homeless community and improve its public reputation in this area. Threats for this proposal may include Houston Public Library's Central Library has faced negative media coverage regarding its relationship with homeless populations, and rebuilding this image will require concerted effort. Public backlash against this proposal is possible, especially from those concerned about safety for both staff and patrons.
The Houston Central Library has often served as a cooling center during heat waves. This has been especially beneficial to the homeless population in downtown Houston, many of whom have nowhere else to go during the heat of the day. However, in June of 2022, in the middle of a heat wave, the city of Houston abruptly removed the Central Library from its list of cooling centers. Local news sources eventually retrieved a series of emails between the head of Central Library and the city's mayor, stating that the library was, quote, inundated with homeless patrons due to the extreme heat. These emails also indicated that homeless patrons had been involved in 2 altercations and that additional security was needed. The cooling center issue was particularly important because the library was the only official cooling center in all of downtown Houston. The goal of this project is to reopen the cooling center in a way that meets the needs of both homeless patrons and the rest of the community. Many homeless patrons live in shelters at night, but they are often required to leave the shelter during the day. Several research studies have examined why homeless patrons use their local libraries during extreme weather events. The main reasons are to get out of the heat or cold, to charge their devices, and to access the internet via the library's Wi-Fi. If you've ever lost power, or worked at a library during a weather emergency, you'll know that lots of people in the community will flock to a library that has power for these exact same reasons. Sadly, research also shows that homeless people avoid the local library during those situations because they do not feel welcome. The news reports mentioned previously confirm that some homeless patrons felt targeted by the change in policies during the summer of 2023. When librarians plan events, especially when they're expecting attendance of 50 to 100 people or more, they carefully consider location and staging to host the best program possible, while minimally impacting other library services or patrons. You wouldn't hold a noisy story time in the adult area, a teen program in the computer lab, or a fundraiser with drinks and music in the children's room and expect it to go well. The same should be true for programs geared toward the homeless population. We have identified several spaces that could work well hosting a large group of people seeking refuge from the heat. The Julia Idison building holds 5 meeting rooms which are reservable by the general public. Two of these rooms, the reading room and the auditorium, are quite large, and as you can see in these photos, are often used for wedding receptions, library programs, and other special events. They have access to the library's Wi-Fi, power strips to plug in devices, as well as seating and reading lamps in their regular configuration. Large numbers of people could use these spaces as a cooling center without impacting patrons in the main building. We realize, of course, that some patrons would want to visit the main library building to use a computer, find a book, or attend library events. We suggest purchasing several device charging lockers for patrons to use while they're visiting the cooling center. These lockers would allow patrons to securely charge their phones, tablets, or computers while they take care of other needs. These charging stations could be installed on rolling carts and moved to the cooling center as necessary and stored away and not in use. At $675 each, plus the cost of a rolling cart, these charging stations are not cheap. However, these charging carts would undoubtedly prove useful around the library for other events, such as teen after-school programs. They would also serve as an incentive for many patrons to use the cooling center as their home base for the day so as not to overcrowd the main building. Lastly, we envision that these cooling centers, especially if they are used regularly by homeless patrons in the summer months, would be an ideal host site for local organizations that want to serve Houston's homeless population. We would start by collecting donations of basic hygiene and health products and handing them out as care kits. These kits could include bottles of soap or shampoo from local hotels, food items from pantries or patron donations, or other supplies donated from over 100 different Houston area organizations that help the homeless population. The cooling center could also serve as a meeting site for members of those organizations or social workers to help homeless individuals look for jobs, find housing, make appointments, or learn new skills.
Our next proposal relates to the library's new cashless payment policy for prints and copies. They implemented this as a safety measure after a series of robberies of printer vending devices across the system. Current policy states that printing is not free for any patrons. Going cashless impacts vulnerable patrons, including many homeless patrons without a credit or debit card. For over a year, from 2023 to 2024, HPL solved this problem by providing free printing to those without a card. They are providing approximately 19,800 free prints and copies a month system-wide. This is almost half of their estimated monthly total of 40,000 prints and copies. They state that they discontinued free printing for non-card holders due to losing their discount from their printing and copying vendor. Keeping in mind this cashless payment policy, as well as the previously discussed policies on conduct that unfairly target homeless patrons, we propose two policy changes to improve the equity of library services. First, we suggest rewording the restroom policy. In his research on social work in libraries, scholar Patrick Lloyd recommends bathroom signage that simply says, "No use of the bathroom for purposes other than intended." As he explains, this small distinction tells patrons, particularly those experiencing homelessness, that the library is not discriminating against the unhoused, but is rather attempting to limit and regulate the use of the bathroom generally. Second, we suggest that HPL allow any size and number of baggage, bedrolls, and blankets so long as they don't obstruct walkways and aren't left unattended. We also want to bring back free prints and copies to those in need at the Central Library. On screen, you'll see our rough cost estimate based on HPL's reported figures. Given the Central Library's documented popularity with the homeless population, we propose that HPL designate $2,000 annually in their budget to bring back free prints and copies at this location. This would represent a fraction of a percent of HPL's 2025 technology and printing budget, which is $5,383,000. It would also align with HPL's stated technology budget goal to, quote, provide equitable access to technology.
To better support underserved and homeless populations, we propose the addition of a social worker at the library. This role would help bridge the gap between library services and essential community resources, enabling staff to connect patrons with government assistance programs, housing services, mental health support, addiction recovery, job placement, and other critical needs. The social worker will also be able to equip staff with crisis management skills and familiarize them with available community resources. This service will not require a budget or additional financing. Houston Public Library will partner with a local university, such as the University of Houston, to allow graduate students completing their social work practicums to complete their internships within the library to practice as a social worker by aiding and connecting vulnerable patrons to local resources. Using a third-party agency is a common approach to arranging social work supervision for students so that A social work site manager would not have to be hired.
Potential partners for our programs include 3 different groups: nonprofit organizations under the Downtown Houston Plus umbrella, local businesses, and homeless shelters. Over 100 different organizations serve Houston's homeless population in various capacities, from providing food or job training to finding temporary or permanent housing solutions. The sheer number of organizations meant that there was substantial overlap in their services, with different groups actually competing to serve the same homeless individuals. In 2001, the city created a program called Downtown Houston Plus, which streamlined services and created electronic databases and communication that allowed Houston's homeless organizations to work together more efficiently. By advertising itself as a site where these organizations can meet with homeless individuals, the library can become an important link between homeless individuals and the people who can help them. These include housing case managers who can help people find housing, mental health case managers, and peer specialists who use their own experiences to help homeless individuals fill out application, give advice, and find the care they need. As mentioned previously, the library would seek out businesses who can donate items to care packages. The Houston Public Library is a large organization with a long history and over 30 branches located throughout the city. The Central Library's prime location next to a site where many homeless individuals hang out all day provides an easy way to find recipients for donated items such as soaps and shampoos, personal health items, food and snacks, clothing, or many other items that would be very helpful to a large group of people. Many homeless people spend their nights at a local shelter, but are required to leave the shelter during the day. Shelter employees and volunteers often become very familiar with their residents, getting to know them on a personal level. They become experts on each person's medical or mental health issues and what skills the residents need to learn in order to improve their lives, such as learning how to apply for a job or use a computer. Unfortunately, shelter employees lack the time or technical resources to help with these sorts of issues. This is where the library could become extremely useful partners. Libraries have computers and other technology, as well as employees who can teach those skills to their patrons. This partnership would help establish or rebuild trust with homeless individuals. We attempted to keep the budget for this project as low as possible in order to reduce objections from staff and the community. Social worker interns would be unpaid, as they are using this opportunity to fill required course hours. Changes in policy would only require staff time. A bank of 32 charging lockers would cost about $2,700 plus the cost of rolling carts or other equipment. We feel that the cost is still low enough to be covered by the library's existing technology budget, as the charging lockers could be used at special events or by other patrons when they are not in the cooling center. We also budgeted $2,000 per year for free prints for those experiencing financial need and who do not have cash on hand to pay for the prints under the new system. We did not allocate any additional funds for this item, as this is the cost that the Houston Library was already paying under its previous printing budget. Our plan consists of 3 main components: bringing a social worker on board, changing library policies, and implementing a cooling center. If we go forward with this project, and assuming we started right away, the first step would be to find a social worker, so this would happen in the winter of 2024. Once on board, that individual would assist library staff and trustees in developing new policies that are more friendly to homeless patrons. This would take place throughout the spring of 2025. This would also be the time to select and order the cell phone charging stations, so that they could be delivered by early summer. This would allow all the components of our plan to be ready by the time the cooling centers would be needed during the heat of the summer. As the warming season ends and cooling centers become less necessary, we would gather feedback from library staff, partner organizations and homeless individuals, and other patrons and begin planning for the next summer. By choosing this project, we are attempting to switch the library's focus from concern over homeless incidents to care for homeless people. In order to evaluate our success, we would start by surveying the community and creating focus groups before we implemented our project in order to get feedback on our proposed changes. This would include library staff, homeless individuals, and other community members. As we progressed through the summer, we would measure participation, attendance, and other metrics such as reduction in complaints about homeless patrons and calls for police or security, the number of partner events at the library, and attendance. At the end of the summer, we would conduct more focus groups and interviews to get feedbacks from everyone involved regarding how the summer programs went. We would also examine the partnerships we have created with local organizations and individuals and evaluate how helpful they were in meeting our goals. These procedures would allow us to figure out how to move forward with both year-round and temporary library programs geared toward helping the homeless people in Houston.
This concludes our proposal. Thank you for watching.